Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to discuss some important questions from the paper Popular Literature. So let's start the video. Discuss the murder of Roger Ackroyd as a crime mystery novel. So the answer is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is one of the top novels that best exemplifies the subgenre of What You Need. A novel that falls under this category presents not one but two stories, the story of the murder and the story of the investigation. In The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, Dr. Shepherd, the narrator, is presented from the beginning as a sincere, sympathetic, and peaceful person, only to discover in the last part of the book that he is a mysterious murderer, leaving readers to question whom to trust. Presenting the narrator as a physician and a polite man is a red herring in itself, distracting readers and misdirecting suspicion. Dr. Shepherd is not a cold-blooded psychopathic person who likes to harm people for his pleasure. Instead, he is an ordinary man who grew weak at some point in his life. Because of his critical financial problems, he blackmails Mrs. Farrar, one of the characters, who quickly commits suicide at the beginning of the novel. When Mr. Ackroyd is informed about this, he is soon also murdered by the physician. As Ackroyd remarks, the mysterious murderer is not a criminal nor a sociopath. He is only a desperate person with a strain of weakness. As Dr. Shepherd indirectly describes himself, almost all the characters avoid the truth in different scenes in the novel. Thus the novel follows the typical pattern of a crime mystery novel, with an unexplained death, cast of suspects, and the brilliant detective who solves the crime. So the next question is, how is the power of class distinction presented in the novel by Agatha Christie? Most of Christie's novels focus on upper class characters, but features members of the serving class in supporting roles. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is no exception, and the power of the division between two classes is visible. This is most clearly illustrated through the character of Ursula Braun, who is married to Ralph Patton, but has to keep it a secret because of her position as a member of the serving class. Ralph is worried that if Mr. Ackroyd finds out that he married a servant with no money, he would be furious. Thus he influenced Ursula to keep the marriage a secret. This secret winds up causing much trouble and adding much confusion to the mystery of Ackroyd's death. The novel suggests deception is a universal truth. By having every character be guilty of some offense committed for love, money, greed, anger, or revenge, the novel implies that people are by nature deceitful. Sometimes the guilt is born out of love, sometimes the guilt is born out of greed. So the next question is, critically examine Carol's use of humor and absurdity in the novel Alice in Wonderland, or it may come as write a short note on the use of fantasy and nonsense in Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland 1865 is one of the most famous child's book of all time. The story of a young girl falling down a rabbit hole, entering a strange world where nothing quite makes sense, captures that childhood state when rules are not yet known and imagination is as powerful as reality. Alice in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll, is a classic in a children's literary genre known as nonsense. Nonsense literature presents language and situations which are not normal. Many examples from the book shows Lewis Carroll's ability to create a sense of uncanny. The characters regularly shows no respect for the basic rules of language. It is not just language that is played around with, the very laws of physics are upside down. The theme that emerges in Alice's book bear many similarities to those explored by the playwright in the theatre of absurd. Time is a recurring theme in Alice's book. In addition, Carol explores the issue of memory. The only consistent philosophy throughout the adventure is that life is absurd and all that she tries is to find enjoyment in the things around her. Alice has a secret craving for organization and meaning, and when the things around her are nonsensical, she is irritated and frustrated. The main motive of the play, as presented by Lewis Carroll, are dream, subversion, language, curious, nonsense and confusing. The imagery of the garden is located with symbolism. It symbolizes the biblical Garden of Eden, where Alice undergoes many changes, from curious, crying, and shy Alice to a confident Alice who can now stand up for herself. Alice in Wonderland is originally a children's story, but its meaning, especially its use of nonsense, goes far beyond this. The next question is, write a critical essay on the representation of the child's perspective in Alice in Wonderland, or write about the moral ethical values of the characters presented in the novel. So if any one of these questions comes in your exam, you can write this answer. The novel Alice in Wonderland conveys some moral ethical values of the characters, especially Alice, and it also shows how little knowledge is dangerous. From the beginning of the novel, we have seen instances where Alice makes her own decision all by herself. She follows the rabbit to the hole and enters the Wonderland. She then discovers a bottle-level drink made, which shrunk her too small. In the second chapter, when she was in her own pool of tears, she met a mouse who was swimming in the hallway. She tries to make a conversation with the mouse in France, but it was of no use, as whatever she remembered was all wrong. Thus, all these instances show her unethical behavior as a child. So, from the very beginning of the novel, we have seen instances where she do things all by herself. She make her own decision. She follows the rabbit without informing anyone. She just does everything by herself. So, this shows the unethical behavior of a child. From the very beginning, as a child, we were taught by our parents to follow them or to inform them before doing something. But Alice in this novel have shown that she make her decision all by herself, and which lead her to uncertain circumstances. In the third chapter, Ellie shows that she does not know where to speak and what to speak, as she frightens all the animals away by talking about her cat after the caucus race. Throughout the novel, Alice drinks and eats whatever she finds without knowing its consequences, which changes her physically every time. All her adventures shows how she is breaking her moral values, doing whatever she wants to. Lewis Carroll wants to convey the message that not only children but elders also behave unethically, sometimes through the character of Hatter, who behaves inappropriately with Alice in the Met Tea Party. Thus, throughout the novel, Alice makes many references to her school lessons, particularly arithmetic and poems, which shows how adults pressurize children to take their studies seriously during the Victorian era. So in the third chapter, Ellie shows that she don't know where to speak and what to speak. She frightens all the animal by talking about her cat, and she also drinks whatever she gets, which changes her physically every time. And throughout the novel, Lewis Carroll has given us many instances where we can see the unethical behavior of the characters, and she also portrayed that not only children but elders also behave unethically sometimes. Like the character of Mad Hatter shows us that he behaved rudely with Alice during the Mad Tea Party. And also, throughout the novel, Alice gave us many references of her arithmetic and poems and mm, whatever she knows as a child. So this shows that parents pressurize children to learn things and take their studies seriously during the Victorian era. So let's move on to the next question. Discuss Alice in Wonderland as a coming of age novel. Alice's adventure in Wonderland can be interpreted as a coming of age story where a young girl is maturing yet she struggles with childish ways, where everything is represented by the character she meets and the things she says. In the very beginning of the novel, we have seen instances where Alice makes her own decision all by herself. She follows the rabbit to the hole, where she suddenly falls a long way to a curious hall, and she sees doors of all sizes. She wants to get through the small door that leads her to a beautiful garden. Of course, Alice is too big to fit through the door, so she drinks the bottle of liquid. This makes her smaller enough, but then she realizes that she can't reach the key. Alice soon starts to lose control after she eats the cake because she is too big now and starts to cry. She then cries until she starts to swim in her own pool of tears. From this point, Alice starts maturing into a young adult. She is no longer a shy girl as she was when she first met the dodo and the mouse. Alice began to stand up for herself. When she met the Mad Hatter, who shouted, "No room, no room," after she came in, Alice didn't care. She sat down and then proceeded to tell, "There is plenty of room." Another time she stands up for herself is when the Queen blamed her in the trial. By the end of the novel, she went from curious, crying, shy Alice to confident Alice who is able to stand up for herself. So, Alice in Wonderland as a coming-of-age novel shows her journey from a shy, crying Alice to a confident Alice who can stand up for herself when the Queen blamed her in the trial, or when the Mad Hatter insulted her by saying that there is no room for her, and she stood up for herself. This novel shows her changes and her journey from a crying Alice to a confident Alice. The next question is, discuss the theme of good versus evil in the novel Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling was published in 1997. From the beginning of the novel, there is a clear distinction between good versus evil. Professor Dumbledore and Harry are wholly good, while Voldemort and his Death Eaters are wholly evil. Whereas Ron and Hermione clearly falls in the category of good. So now if there is good, there has to be evil somewhere lurking around. From Hagrid's word, we came to know that Voldemort is the one who has killed Harry's parents, but has failed to kill Harry because of his mother's act of sacrifice for him. Then the Dursleys, they are the worst sort of muggles alive on earth. Not a single thing is pleasant about them. When Harry comes to Hogwarts, on his way he meets Draco Malfoy, who is evil personified. Yet over the course of the narrative, Rowling complicates the issues and creates a sort of complexity, particularly in the character of Professor Snape and Professor Quirrell. So the novel Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone give us a clear distinction between good versus evil. Professor Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall, Hagrid, Harry, Ron, Hermione all falls in the category of good, whereas Voldemort and his Death Eaters falls in the category of bad. Similarly, Dursleys and Draco Malfoy also falls in the category of evil, but in the course of the narration, Rowling complicates the issue of good versus evil through the character of Professor Snape and Professor Quirrell. The concept of good and evil are too complex to be expressed in terms of black and white, and every character has some good element and some evil in their nature. Rowling wanted to show that people possess both good and evil inside them, but it is our choice that whether we want to fight with the evil inside us to make the good within us shine. So the fight for good is always the fight against a pure evil. So the concept of good and evil or good and bad is very complicated, because every person has something good and something bad within themselves. So it is our choice to reflect whatever we want to. If we want to reflect the bad within us, then it's our call, and if we want to reflect the good within us, then that is upon us. So throughout the novel, Rowling just shows that it's upon us what we want to show to the world. So I hope you all have got the basic idea of what type of question may come in your exam, and I hope it will be helpful for you all. Thank you.